Folks, this video is probably going to be one of the most exciting ones I make all year, and I know it's February, so I'm getting ahead of myself, but I really can't get much more excited than I am right now talking about the fact that I have played some of Life is Strange Reunion over a month before release. It is an incredible honor, and I thank Square Enix hugely for it. They actually invited me down to their offices in London to try it firsthand. Not a paid for trip, for anyone who's seen previous videos of me being invited to studios and how that didn't work out in the end. Payday 3. It was completely financed by myself. They just offered me to go down to the studio if I wanted, and it was only because the remote test they invited me to just didn't work from my room. That's a whole other thing, and I will talk about it later because I do want to talk about going to their office because it was amazing. I was really, really glad to be invited there. But right now, I want to focus on the game because this is going to be an embargo you'll notice that a lot of people are now lifted on. Content creators, press, a lot of us have had a chance to play a chunk of the game and give our thoughts on it ahead of time. And I mean, if nothing else, the fact that we're getting this far ahead of time to talk about the game, I would hope is a good sign that the rest of the game is going to be as good as what I've played. There certainly seems to be a bit of confidence in this one, perhaps more so than there was in Double Exposure, which, as we know, has not been the most well-received offering for some of its things. I liked it, didn't think it was as good as some of the other games, mainly because of its closing narrative, but I will say, as just kind of an introductory thing, that while I am going to go into a lot of details about Reunion today and what I played, first off, I'm not going to go into tons of spoilers. I may mention the odd detail here and there about things gameplay-wise and maybe the odd bit of plot, but I really want to preserve this as much as I can for people. But also, as an opening verdict on it, I have played what I guess would have been roughly the second chapter of the game if there were like 5 chapters. There aren't chapters this time around. And I will say right now, I'll go on record, if the rest of the game is as good as the bit I've played, we're in for an absolute treat. Not saying the best game of the franchise, because I don't think the first game can ever be beaten personally, but it will certainly stand on similar shoulders to Before the Storm, True Colors, games that I really love in this series, so I'm hopeful. I know obviously Double Exposure's narrative ending and conclusion wasn't great, and I hope Reunion doesn't repeat that, but assuming it doesn't, and the rest of it does flow quite nicely, we're in for a real treat here. I genuinely do believe it, so we'll see in execution when it all comes out, but I'm left, after playing what I've played, feeling incredibly optimistic, so we shall see. Also, I should have mentioned, I'm adding in now, that some of the footage you're going to see was recorded during my playthrough. The section of Max and Chloe after reuniting was all captured in my playthrough. Everything else is B-roll footage that's been supplied to me, so I'm going to give you a bit of a mesh of them all as I'm going through talking about the game, because it's not all going to be gameplay, some of it's going to be me talking, but I want you to get a feel for different bits of the game as I'm talking through the different parts I liked about my preview. And if you're new to the channel, please do feel free to click subscribe. I will be talking about Reunion again on this channel. I'm planning to do videos on other games, but at the minute, it's all Life is Strange, and I'm not really complaining about that. Also, please feel free to like the video too. Help get out in the algorithm for more Life is Strange fans. So, let's talk about it, shall we? As I hinted at, this feels like what would roughly be the second chapter of the game. We were given a bit of a video explanation before we started playing of what had happened in the game up to where we were jumping in. Basically, the stuff we already know. There's going to be a fire in Caledon University. Max has got 3 days to solve it after having gone back in time and is now trying to figure out what leads up to the fire. And in the middle of that, Chloe turns back up and she's getting mixed up in everything going on with Max in her new life in Caledon with all the consistent characters we'd seen in Double Exposure, now meshing together with Chloe. And that is a really good point, I think, for me to start with explaining my thoughts on this game, because I played the lead up to and immediate aftermath of Max and Chloe reuniting, possibly one of the most exciting parts of the game I've actually seen play out as it is in the game. Absolutely fantastic. They chose a song that plays when they first reunite that really, it got a tear in my eye, honestly. Someone in the Square Enix office was watching me, like, wipe a tear away from my face, and I felt so cringy. 26 years of age, by the way, absolutely no shame. But I just think that was handled quite well, the build-up to it in the aftermath. That was really good. But I also just really like how Chloe's been fitted into this game. We're seeing Max and Chloe interacting with Caledon, an environment we're already used to from Double Exposure, but you're playing as both of them, as we found out in the reveal event last month, and both of them have their own mechanics. Max is able to rewind time, Chloe's able to use her Backtalk ability. Both characters feel like themselves. Max still feels like she does in Double Exposure, for better or worse. Some people, again, I've said this before, didn't seem to like Max's character as much in Double Exposure. I honestly think she's fantastic. I really love the evolution where she's still this kind of curious, bit timid photographer, but also is matured a bit, now in a more educational role, which I think, fingers crossed, we might actually see more of in this game. It's one of my other critiques of Double Exposure. There is conversation in the game. I will say that much about her delivering classes. She's now a full-time teacher at the university, delivering actual introductory classes to people, not just the kind of in-house resident artist. I'm hopeful we'll see more. There was actually a bit in our little introductory video that suggested we might see her teaching, but it might skip it in the game. I don't know. I didn't see it actually play out. Just some teasers, so fingers crossed. And Chloe, I mean, she's matured. She's also, like Max, approaching the age of 30 at this point, but still has the exact same attitude. She's still a bit loud, bit obnoxious. She'll still push someone over if they're not talking to her in a way that she likes. But she's aged a little bit too. There's a comment that's made by Max because Chloe is now the manager of a band called Drugstore Makeup, and Max makes a little reference in her head where she says, Chloe's now the one stopping people from stealing merch instead of stealing the merch herself. Obviously a callback to Life is Strange Before the Storm. They both feel like evolved characters that still have their own unique personalities. There was a decent balance in what I played between Max and Chloe, although I think it was maybe more like 60%, 65% Max focused out of it. But you do bounce between the two characters, including one point which I won't spoil the context of because I just thought it was quite cool, but there was a loading screen and it wasn't inherently obvious immediately I was switching from Max to Chloe because it was a cutscene that was still focused on Max, and then during the cutscene the focus switched to Chloe completely seamlessly in a way that I thought was really cool. I didn't realize I was switching characters until it happened, and I thought, oh, that was well handled. But they also blend into the world really well with the characters that we have established previously in Double Exposure. One of the best things that I played in it, other than obviously seeing the two reunite, was actually a scene between Chloe and Amanda in the Snapping Turtle. It was something I wasn't really expecting, but I actually feel like Chloe fits really well in this Caledon environment. She still is a bit of a fish out of water, but how she's written in and how she's interacting with the environment so far, I really like. I'm excited to see her talk to Moses. It's something that in what I was playing was hinted at and was going to happen before I cruelly had the controller snatched out of my hands. I'm really intrigued to see how much more she beds in with that world. I'm really excited to see that develop. In terms of the plot, like I said, it was mainly focused on Max and Chloe, and the bit I played was leading up to their meeting, and there were some hints of the wider plot. We know obviously, again, like I said, about this fire, and it seems like within that investigation, there are some things from the previous game, Double Exposure, that may well appear here. We know characters like Safi, Moses, Loretta, all those are coming back. I saw bits of Loretta in what I played, but also the Abraxas Society, the kind of Vortex Club of Caledon University, something I felt wasn't very well developed in Double Exposure, seems to be taking on a much more important part in this game. I don't even know how, just there was more mention of them this time, and I was like, okay, so we're heading towards something with that maybe, that could be cool. But it does feel like a strong setup, especially because you're hitting the ground running with characters you already know. You're going back to a formula that we know worked before with Max's rewind ability and Chloe's backtalk, two things that worked very well in their respective games, and you're picking up with a story that's already had quite the build-up and quite the lead-up, despite how shaky the ending was, as I've said already, to a point where you've got a narrative defined in a world you know, with people you know, and it's building on that. It is a big melting pot that they're then running with. It's a strong setup, and I think what I'm seeing so far is leading in a very interesting direction. How it gets handled and how things end, my guess is as good as anyone else's at that point. Most of the focus in the section I played was on Max and Chloe, actually. It was on their relationship, because you get moments from both of them acknowledging that they still haven't spoken to each other after Chloe sent that text to Max at the end of Double Exposure. They both want to talk to each other, but can't bring themselves to push it any further because they're scared of the repercussions, they're scared of what each other will think. And when they have their conversation discussing becoming distant, or in my case, breaking up, you get to control both of them explaining their emotions on it. There's a really cool dialogue feature in this game specifically, where in a conversation, you will bounce between which character is speaking and choose what they say. Obviously not the whole time, because the whole thing would be completely chosen by you and the dialogue would fall apart. But there are moments where one person will ask a question and it might flip you around to the other person to pick the answer so that you can guide both of their relationships together equally, which is such an interesting choice that I didn't really see coming, but I really enjoy. And it also gives Chloe a chance to explain a bit more about her walking out on Max, a decision that definitely felt a bit ham-fisted and was a little bit blunt to do off screen, but the way they're handling it now is about as well as I think they could be doing it. They're making it clear that, you know, while it wasn't a nice thing to do, they're trying to make it feel a bit more human, a bit more natural, that Chloe made the choice to walk away from Max because of extenuous circumstances like the guilt of the past, the trauma, not being able to move on, all that stuff. And actually one line of dialogue pops up that people used as an argument repeatedly on Twitter when Double Exposure came out, which was the whole, they promised they'd stay together forever. They actually put that into the discussion where they're like, we made that promise, do we still honour it? And Max is questioning whether they're still the same people they were when they made that choice. Obviously, the things you choose in that dialogue with Max and Chloe will lead them in the direction of whether they are still like those people and whether they're not. They really do feel like they're responding directly, not just to the criticism that Double Exposure got, but to how they've changed and evolved since Life is Strange Season 1. And you can debate whether this is direct response to criticism from Double Exposure as much as you want. I still wonder in the timeline that this game's been developed in less than 18 months, whether all of this was planned from the start and just wasn't handled well in Double Exposure, but it doesn't really matter if the finished product is good, and I'm thinking the way they're handling it, as I said, is about as good as it could be. I'm liking the way they're trying to handle this in the wake of how it was handled in Double Exposure. They're trying to really make it seem like that breakup was believable, and I think it's working to some extent, even if the breakup felt unnecessary to begin with, which it definitely did in the way it was handled in the last game. To that point though, I've seen Deck 9 say that you don't need to play Double Exposure to play Reunion, and that's probably true. There's going to be a story so far recap and the chance to pick your choices. But I mean, seriously, even if Double Exposure isn't quite as good as some of the other games, definitely play it before Reunion. We're in the same setting with a lot of the same characters. And if you pick up the twin pack digitally, it's like $5 or $10 more to lump in Double Exposure. As far as I'm concerned, definitely play that before you play Reunion. I don't personally think you'll have as good of a time if you're not already absorbed into that world and don't already know some of the characters. I think for its faults, it's still well worth playing and it's still a good game. It's just maybe not quite as good as some of the others I've played because I hold them to such high caliber and love them all dearly. In terms of mechanics though, as I've mentioned, Max has a rewind ability. It works exactly the same as it did in Life is Strange 1. You can rewind really small bits of time just to gain time back in like a time-sensitive activity. You can rewind entire conversations and play them out differently, see how they go. You can pick up bits of dialogue that you can then use against them by rewinding time. There was a moment of that specifically in my demo that felt just like something in the first game, which I absolutely loved. Chloe's Backtalk, the ability to try and persuade your way into something, again, feels very much like Before the Storm. Although, I don't know if in Before the Storm so much you would see things in the wider environment to help you in Backtalk. I think it might have happened once or twice, but I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But in the bit I played, which is actually the same one you see in the reveal event, looking around before the event happens gives you a bit of a hint as to some things to say in Backtalk, which is a very big plus. One thing I love about Life is Strange, and I think I actually mentioned in my Dispatch review in my 2025 end of year video, is that I like these story-based games when they give you a chance to explore, to pick up extra details, to feel more like you're living in the world. While I like Dispatch, and I don't want to put something down to pick something else up, I never like doing that, I did feel like Dispatch forced you along a path very linearly, and you didn't really get that time to absorb into the world because you were constantly pushing forward. Life is Strange works well, as it always has, by giving you that sandbox. Yeah, sure, it's still restricted spaces, but you can look around, talk to people you don't have to speak to, look at different things in the environment you don't have to look at. Having that freedom to explore and then use things to guide you, I think, is always nice. And even if it's only small, subtle touches, it makes a world of difference for someone like me, and I want to make sure I point that out. I also should briefly mention soundtrack as well, because there are a couple of moments of calm moments in the bit that I played where, you know, you kind of sit back and listen to music while something's playing around you. One of them was a song by Tessa Rose Jackson called Past Life. Now, Tessa has written most of the music, well, all the original music, I should say, for Double Exposure, which suggests that Reunion is going in the same musical direction as Double Exposure did. There was also an original song, the name of which I can't quite remember, but both of the songs actually appeared during the reveal event. The music you've already heard through that is music that's in Reunion, and it all sounds good. I mean, I like the soundtracks of all the games anyway, so that's no change to normal, but I do quite like that we're getting the same kind of music as from Double Exposure in Reunion, because I quite liked the vibe of that game sonically, so I'm glad that we're getting a bit more of that. Going back to Max and Chloe, though, as a lot of this video is mainly doing, because that's the whole point of this game, one thing I really want to talk about is the biggest concern I had going into Max and Chloe Reuniting, and that was the casting of Chloe. Now, don't get me wrong, I adore Rhianna DeVries as Chloe. I think they do an absolutely fantastic performance in Before the Storm, little cameo bits in True Colours and all that, but I was worried going into this as to how Rhianna and Hannah's chemistry would work, because every time it's been Max and Chloe until now, it's always been Hannah Tell and Ashley Birch, and I adore Ashley Birch's performance as Chloe. Really, in a lot of ways, wish she'd still come back, don't get me wrong, and that's nothing against Rhianna, because obviously they're two very great actors and performers for Chloe Price, but I have to say, I instantly bought the chemistry between Hannah and Rhianna. There's absolutely no question there. Is it a bit strange? The voice is a bit different compared to what we would be used to with Hannah playing Max? Yeah, a little bit. But in some ways, I feel like maybe it's the writing or the way that they've matured a bit. I don't think the Chloe in Reunion feels identical to either of the previous games, more so than she's just kind of a mesh of the two. It might just be psychological, so don't necessarily quote me to that, but just in some of the vocal deliveries and some of the way that the character's handled, it feels like a mesh of the two. I need to play more to know that for sure, I'll be honest, but especially the fact that everything's mocapped, the chemistry you feel between the two of them really gets sold well at certain points. There's actually a look that Rhianna gives as Chloe in one of the scenes right after they've reunited and Max is trying to explain what happened in Double Exposure effectively. Chloe explains that she's having these visions of certain things, and I don't want to explain too much about what the visions are, because again, I don't want to go into too much spoilers, but Chloe's asking if Max did this particular thing, and she goes, well, not that time, and Chloe pulls his face to be like, what are you talking about? And it's these subtle little glances and the way they bounce off each other that you can tell they did this stuff together. It's a problem sometimes with games where everyone records their voice lines, you know, more uniquely in booths. It's just the way the industry works. Whereas when people do it together in rooms with mocap and being able to actually build off each other's chemistry, that you can believe it a bit more. And I do with this game. I believe that they were both in the room recording it together, because I can see it in the way that they bounce off each other and the way their facial expressions work. They can build on it in a way the original game just couldn't. The original game didn't even have good lip syncing. Now you've got good lip syncing, facial animations, proper chemistry between them that's even more believable. It's incredible. I really do think they work together fantastically. Hannah and Rhianna are a brilliant combination. Much as I love Ashley and would have loved to see her come back, I don't in any way hate or feel even slightly weaker on the return of Chloe because it's Rhianna and not Ashley. I think both are on the same level now. Honestly, both bring their own unique things, and I really do think that Hannah meshes well with both of them. It's wonderful. Where it goes from there, of course, with the romance, we'll have to see. As I mentioned, there was a conversation about the breakup and where that was going to go. I've not seen anything else from that, obviously. It seems to me as though this game is going to go full send on Max and Chloe romancing. The question I have is how much they'll reflect on previous romances, because whether you romanced Amanda and Vin or not is going to come up in this game. It was noticed one of the more key choices from Deck 9 in one of their social posts recently. But in what I played, I had Max interact with both Amanda and Vin, and I also had Chloe interact with Amanda, and also Lucas, weirdly enough. He had a scene with Chloe that I actually really liked in the bit I played, so that was an interesting twist. But the point is, I've seen these characters interact, and nothing within that yet has reflected any previous choices. Now, in the build I played, I chose to play a certain save file only based on whether Chloe was alive or dead, and whether they were romanced or not. Romancing of Amanda or Vin was not in question when I picked my save file, so it may well be the bits I played just didn't reflect that, and other bits will, because supposedly they're going to. But I want to make it clear that nothing I played gave any kind of reflection of consequences of the Amanda-Vin romance. Maybe that will come later. I don't know. I will say I do hope that we still have other romance options. While I'm going to be Max and Chloe till I die, I would really like to see if anything else comes of Max and Amanda. In a vacuum, if Chloe isn't there, I think Amanda was actually a really good match for Max, despite the manipulatory nature of how Max romanced her in Double Exposure. Still don't love that, but their scene, that date, is still one of my favourite things, honestly, in the entire series. I think the way it was written and performed was absolutely brilliant. I would like in future saves to go over and see what her romance was like. Maybe even Vin's, because Vin is a character I didn't like very much in Double Exposure because they pushed him as a romance option despite being one of the main suspects in Safi's death, which just felt so strange. Like they had to pick a male option and went, well, he's the best choice, go for him. But in this game, without spoiling it too much, obviously consequences of Double Exposure in consideration, he makes a point about how his life is kind of his own to choose now, and he seems happier for it. And I enjoyed the dialogue between him and Max more than I ever have, so that was cool too. So if there's a romance option there, I'd be interested to see if that goes anywhere. It obviously won't ever compare to Max and Chloe in my head, as I've said, but I hope the options are still there. I hope that in the midst of focusing so hard on Max and Chloe, that the other romances haven't fallen by the wayside. If they do, it is what it is, casualty of having the Price Field ship back together, but I do think it'd be nice to have the other options if they're available. But that's about the end of my notes on Reunion. There's probably more I could say, but like I said, I'm trying to be very careful with what I go into here, because I'm aware that for a lot of people, keeping spoilers out of this is as important as actually playing the game, because you want to experience it for yourself. So while there are certain bits I could have said, I'm choosing not to because I don't think it's a good idea. And as I've said, other people will have talked about this differently to me. So if you want more spoilers, go look up someone else's video. I'm sure they'll have done it more. This is what I feel is the right amount to tell you about the game without going too far and spoiling it, because even though I obviously know everything I've played, I still feel like I've got quite a few things left to find out in the game that haven't been revealed to me. But I think the less you know, the better with these games sometimes. So I want to try and keep that in mind. Thank you very much for listening, for your opinions, but I do want to finish, as I said, by just thanking Square Enix a little bit. As I said, it wasn't a paid trip or anything, but I'm one of those people who's aware that while I've got a pretty decent sized audience and subscriber base on YouTube, I'm not a big YouTuber, far from it. So whenever I get an opportunity like this, it does mean a lot. As I said, the idea was I was meant to be doing a remote playthrough of the game, but I didn't have a wired connection in my room, and setting it up and everything, it just did not work. I had a very laggy experience, and then I got offered the chance, if I could make the trip myself and cancel work and pay for my trips and all that, to come down to the studio if I so chose, and I straight away bit the hand off, because I was like, yeah, absolutely, that's a chance I will absolutely lap up. I got to go down to the studio, have a look around, see some of the Life is Strange stuff on display, which was awesome. Also made me even more regretful that I still haven't played Final Fantasy. Really going to get into that at some point. But I also just want to mention that I managed to see a few little Life is Strange bits. There'll be more of it on my Instagram, so please do go follow me over there at RedArcherLive. I'd appreciate it greatly. But I got to take a picture with a giant hot dog man. In fact, I also managed to get a Polaroid. I have no idea if this is coming out. Oh, it is coming out on the camera. Look at that. Because of course I took the Polaroid camera. I mean, I went to Square Enix to play Life is Strange. Of course I took the Polaroid camera. But I also just want to thank them for one extra little thing that I didn't want to front load with, because it felt like a really weird flex, but it's something I'm very, very blessed about. I didn't get a chance, unfortunately, to meet Hannah Talley, who played Max, when she went to a signing event in August of 2024 before Double Exposure came out. I missed out on the chance. I really regretted it because one of my friends met her and won't stop talking about it. Don't blame her, really. I mean, I've interviewed Hannah before on this channel. It's one of my favourite interviews, but I've never met her in person, so I don't have anything signed. And I mentioned that in the office when I saw some signed posters on the wall, and it just so happened they had a spare one in there. So one of the guys in there, who I will not name because I don't know if he was allowed to give this to me, I hope he was, is why I'm mentioning it here, but he said, actually, we've got a spare, and this should have been framed, but for once I ordered something on Amazon that didn't come next day, but I have a signed poster from Hanatel that says ready for the mosh pit Shaka Bra. But yeah, I haven't stopped being excited about that, and I probably won't for a while. So just generally, the chance to get to Square Enix, to get to play Reunion in an in-house build, to get to see some of the double exposure stuff they had on display in there, to get to just talk to some of the staff about how much I love the franchise, genuinely a huge honor. And as I've said already, it hasn't colored my opinion of Reunion at all. If I had my concerns, I genuinely would share them, especially because if you aren't new to this channel, I've been burned before about praising a game that turned out not being so well. I wasn't paid to go down there. I asked about having a look around Life is Strange stuff and they let me have a look. It was more of me showing an interest in the franchise and them going, yeah, sure. So I want to make that very clear. There was no kind of schmoozing me or buttering me up. These are all genuinely my honest opinions having played the game, and I really am impressed with what I've played so far, and I have such high hopes for how it ends. I just hope that everything else is as good as what I played, because if it is, I am going to be singing this game's praises in a month's time. I genuinely cannot wait for it. With Double Exposure, I got to play the game fully early and review it. I do hope I get the chance to do that again. If I don't, I'll review the game as soon as I get it finished when it comes out. We'll just see what happens there, but make no mistake, when Reunion launches, I will be talking about it. I will be giving my full review, and I'm probably ready to shed a few tears, because that's probably where this game's going to go. So thank you all very much for watching. I truly do appreciate it. It means the world to me if you check this out and support me. This is, like I said, a franchise I care about so very deeply, and I'm very excited to see where it all goes when the game ends or releases, and when the story of Max and Chloe ends at the end of March. Thank you all so much for watching. As I've said already, please do subscribe to stay up to date with future videos. Hit like if you've enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the game. If there are any questions you want to know that I didn't answer in this video, please leave them down below. I will answer them as best I can, trying to avoid spoilers and not give too much of the game away, obviously. But thank you all so much. I really cannot thank you enough for the support, and thank you again to Square Enix for honouring me with the chance to play the game a bit early. I really do appreciate that, and I don't want that to be undersold. But either way, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all very soon in a new video. Look after yourselves, stay safe, take care.